Welcome to First Congregational Church, Guilford, Connecticut, where we say whomever you are and wherever you are on life's journey, you're welcome here. So today, if you're watching from your living room or your garden or your patio, welcome. We will be putting out our service online as well as having in-person service today. We are fortunate to do that because we have a sanctuary that is filled with windows and all the windows are open. We are still masked and distanced, but we are together in worship. As we begin our time, let's focus on our passage from the Gospel of Mark, chapter 9. Hear our story today. They went on from there and passed through Galilee. He did not want anyone to know it, for he was teaching his disciples, saying to them, "The Son of Man is to be betrayed with human hands, and they will kill him. And 3 days later, after being killed, he will rise again." But they did not understand what he was saying, and they were afraid to ask. Then they came to Capernaum, and Jesus was in the house, and he asked, "What were you arguing about on the way here?" But they were silent. On the way, they had argued with one another, asking this question, "Who is the greatest?" Jesus sat down, called the 12, and said to them, "Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all." And then he took a little child and put them among them. And taking them in his arms, Jesus said, "Whoever welcomes one such child in my name welcomes me. And whoever welcomes me welcomes not only me, but the one who sent me." May God grant us wisdom and understanding to this passage.
Thank you, Ginger. So during the pandemic, a lot of us abandoned our habit of limiting our screen time. A habit that was instilled in me from a young age that only so much time before a TV or a series was good for me. So we binge watched many a Netflix show. One of these has now run for 39 episodes and 3 seasons and counting, and it's the Netflix and Vox Media produced, very high quality series called Explained. Each episode, released one per week, lasts only 26, maybe even 16 minutes, and it focuses on a different topic, ranging in subject matter from the history of capital and money to royalty, pandemics, sugar, oil, climate change, hurricanes, billionaires, the gender pay gap, and many, many other issues and problems. At first, I really liked this short, simple, digestible, I would even call it erudite series that comes at the start of every week. Each contains a bit of new learning. But the other day while watching one, I had a realization about something I hadn't before. I noticed something about the pedagogical approach and even the editorial plan that shifted my feelings. It made me rethink this whole series called Explained and the premise, something we also see within whatever news media is our choice, that a whole complicated subject matter, a topic, can be even marginally or summarily explained within 16 to 26 minutes. While entertaining and engaging, what do we miss with this model of quick bumper sticker learning? Is this also what we want from our news reports, our activism, and our religion? Have we come to expect clear conclusions in easy, good versus bad, Cartesian categories? Perhaps pessimism sells more advertising? So here's the formula, and I watched several of them and outlined them, flowed them to figure it out. In 16 to 26 minutes, a giant problem or question is posed. Experts are brought forth and edited carefully, quoted and intertwined. Graphics are generated, and a great and inescapable conclusion is reached. Almost 90% of the time, that conclusion is overwhelming and insurmountable. So many facts in the way of change. While I rarely have any factual disagreements with the Vox Netflix series Explained, I noticed with the episodes about capital and money and the episodes about climate change that they intentionally left you feeling shocked, overwhelmed, and hopeless. The last word is an inescapable, undeniable entrenchment. These shows at the end do not leave you motivated for action and creative problem solving, new, hopeful thinking, but rather rage, anger, or worst of all, perhaps, despair. The way they get these episodes down to 16 to 26 minutes, like in our news reports and headlines and, frankly, sermons, is that the moderates, the optimists, and those creating new promising practices for change and new ways of building are often left out. That would make things too hard to explain in 16 minutes. That would take some of the lucrative drama away. The drama, the part that makes it entertaining, is that we are left completely overwhelmed. What can I possibly do? Do any of my recycling efforts my whole life matter? How can I make a difference for love and wholeness when there is so much bias, hate, and unpleasantness in our world? What is there for me to do? We're scared out of change-making or overwhelmed into helplessness, for all is already explained. The scale, the scope, the entrenchment, the enculturation, the history, the politics, and the obvious ways forward all seem too much when framed as already past tense, explained. To explain is defined as to make an idea or situation or problem clear to someone by describing it in more detail or revealing relevant facts or ideas. So in light of how hopeless so many issues seem to be right now, let me try and explain something else. Hope explained. For the Christian tradition, we have this one idea that is incredibly challenging for us in our modern times. Hope. Hope in the face of the impossible, the unlikely, or the prevailing winds of the status quo. Hope for a new consensus. Hope for a new politic. Hope to learn from each other rather than continue explaining things to each other. Christians are called to maintain hope for a better world, for a people, for the whole world, even and especially when compromise seems impossible. After some meditation and prayer, I came up with this definition for myself and my own journey to try and resurrect hope. Hope is a collective refusal to accept the impossibility of something better than the status quo and the towering, demoralizing effect of the now and the how we got here. Hope is a one-word visioning statement for people of all faiths working to fight hate and secure justice. Friends, as people of faith in the world right now, I'm worried that our completely explained living has become hopeless for a new way of being and finding change. This, of course, does not mean that we should wish ourselves or others ignorance or obliviousness, but on the right and on the left, we are being called to accept simple explanations for complex geopolitical, global, personal, and societal issues. We explain to each other rather than learn from one another. We explain rather than listen. We explain rather than grow. We explain rather than innovate. with 16 to 26 minute long video lectures, we declare ourselves expert. Explained is a fun little series with some really good content, and I will keep watching it for entertainment, aware of that editorial formula that ends in despair. It has some good learnings in it, but we cannot let the simple explanations or the whys or the how we got here's keep us from the hope for what is next. Our lectionary reading for today comes to us from the Gospel according to Mark, chapter 9. And it is filled with Jesus exploring paradox, the impossible, and the irrational. It brings us to the heart of hope. Aspirations for a better and different world beyond our current explanations. Each of the 4 gospel accounts, Matthew, Mark, Luke, and John, were written for different communities of people in 4 different places by 4 different groups of people in different times and settings. Jesus, his way of communicating, his personality, and his purpose is portrayed differently in each. This is a fun way of studying scripture that academics call a historical critical hermeneutical method. The Gospel of Mark is particularly fun because it is the oldest, strangest, and Jesus is generally in a very odd mood with his followers. He constantly has to explain things to them, and they almost never follow his illogical declarations. It seems on the surface like a comedy of errors in miscommunication. But more recent scholars tell us that Mark is actually a coherent narrative, an embrace of mystery and irony beyond life explained. So one of my professors at Divinity School at Emory was a professor named Carl Holliday, and I was in the last section of New Testament he would ever teach. He had a dry sense of humor that also came through in his writing, and the way we knew that is he used his own textbook, A Critical Introduction to the New Testament, as his course material. In this book, he writes about Mark and our passage today. No gospel explores the mystery of faith and hope more profoundly than Mark. From start to finish in the Gospel of Mark, most conspicuously, Jesus' own disciples, the 12 and the larger circle of disciples, fail to penetrate the mystery of Jesus' true identity and mission, even though they were constantly with him and taught by him privately. This is the paradox Mark relentlessly explores. Being close to Jesus fails to ensure faith. It even prevents it. Those who heard his teachings most directly understood it the least. Especially this is true of his thrice repeated prediction of suffering, death, and resurrection, one of which is our passage today. It is in this sense that Jesus is an elusive figure in Mark. He performs dramatic miracles, then silences those who witness the healing. He speaks in parable not to clarify or explain, but to obscure and nuance. His favorite way of referring to himself, Son of Man, in Mark, is utterly baffling, as the continued scholarly debate shows. Thus, what is done in plain view turns out to be quite unclear, unexplained, which accounts for Mark's highly developed sense of the ironic. Y'all, we are living in a very Gospel of Mark time. God is still speaking, but we are trying to make everything we hear explainable, digestible, and simple, right versus left. Thus, what is done in plain view turns out to be quite unclear, which accounts for a highly developed sense of the ironic in September 2021. Chapter 9, verses 30 through 37 can be seen as 3 parts that make a whole. First, it's important to note that they're passing through Galilee. It's a little phrase that you can miss at the beginning, but it's important. Here at a turning point in the text, Jesus returns in passing to where it all began to make a big announcement. This symbolizes a wholeness, a cycle within the story, within the narrative. In Scripture, Geography matters to flow and meaning. The return to Galilee is like an exclamation mark in the text, emphasizing the importance of this moment. It is liminal. Upon passing through Galilee, he starts to talk about the conclusion of the story and what really matters. Jesus talks about his own death and life in the paradox of rebirth. The Bible then says, but they did not understand what he was saying, and they were afraid to ask him. After that, notice it never says that Jesus bothered to explain it to them. Lesson 1, it's okay to be confused. Life, God, life and death are confusing. Sometimes we just have to leave it at that. There is liberation and hope in knowing it is okay to sit with questions unanswered. Secondly, in that middle part, the disciples try to out-explain to each other who is the greatest and why each deserves to be the favorite. I'm sure very, very good data points and examples were presented. But Jesus isn't interested in all that. Instead, he offers them a second paradox. Whoever wants to be first must be last of all and servant of all. The hope is not found in a traditional source of power, but in completely new ways of seeing and ordering relationship. What matters is care for one another more than proofs or data of power or righteousness. I'm sure one of those disciples in that debate was right, but it doesn't matter. Third, when they still don't get the big message, he points to the children, the next generation, saying, whomever welcomes one such as a child in my name welcomes me, and whoever welcomes me welcomes the one who sent me. That's what matters. First, we learn to live with the uncertainty, the mystery, the unexplained. Second, we just care for each other. That paradox of true power that matters more than explaining or being right. And third, we remember what's at stake for generations beyond. It's not necessarily who's the best or most qualified. Hope explained is rather simple. Let's allow for ambiguity and complexity again, for irony as neighbors, as friends, and as family. That allows room for hope, innovation, activism, and new patterns to emerge. As people of faith and multi-generational community, we are called to lean into the message of Mark, to allow for uncertainty, and to not have to explain everything into the simplest terms and dogmas. Karl Barth once wrote, "Our knowledge of God begins in all seriousness with the knowledge of the hiddenness of God." Blaise Pascal, a 15th century Catholic theologian, also wrote, "A religion which denies that God is hidden, God is unexplainable, is not true." I hear these voices of the past, and I think that they were also reading Mark. I've always found the Gospel of Mark to be the most helpful for me because it allows for a world of the improbable, the other, the impossible, and the not yet done or discovered, the ironic, the question, and the inverse to emerge. Mark is completely unexplainable. And in that, there is hope for us to matter, to find purpose, and to do a new thing. A friend recently introduced me to a new song. It resonates deeply for me for this moment, and with a call to return to hope in the face of deep pessimism, overwhelmingly complex problems, and what feels like insurmountable obstacles for our ethics and our humanity. We cannot give up. We cannot stop dreaming. The quest for a better world is not concluded or easy or summarizable in 16 to 26 minutes. We might adopt a little bit of that Jesus paradoxical thinking that might maybe perhaps have the ability to make new things possible again. Maybe in the face of everything being explained, a done deal. we can find hope again. While this song was written as part of a 20th century play, The Man of La Mancha, it has taken on its own identity and layers and meaning. It was the campaign song for Bobby Kennedy's presidential campaign. It was sung by Aretha Franklin at Rosa Parks' memorial service. It was sung for President Obama and former First Lady Michelle Obama in their honor by Cynthia Erivo at the Kennedy Center in 2017. And it was one of the Olympic songs in 1996. It has been sung by everyone from Frank Sinatra and Josh Groban to Cher, Susan Boyle, The Temptations, and Liberace. The song is called The Impossible Dream, or The Quest. And it cries out with hope in the face of what is decidedly, numerically, empirically, certainly impossible. It says no to allowing 16 to 26-minute videos with all of the known facts make us despondent and unwilling to take action. To dream the impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. And I know if I'll only be true to this glorious quest, that my heart will lie peaceful and calm when I'm laid to rest. And the world might be better for this, and one person sore and covered with scars still strove with their last ounce of courage to fight the unbeatable foe, to reach unreachable stars. Can we end gun violence? Can we work to get along with our neighbors on different political backgrounds? Can we support new technology and ideas to help us become resilient to climate change? Can interfaith community thrive? Can we end incidents of bias-motivated incidents and hate? Can we teach love and compassion and understanding to our children? Will we try? Will we bother? What can happen next? For 39 episodes and 3 seasons and counting, Netflix and Vox Media have produced a fascinating, high-paced series called Explained. Each episode only lasts 16 to 24 minutes, focusing on a different topic from capital and money to climate change and billionaires and oil and hurricanes and so many other problems. We need to learn and have things explained to us. But we also need to understand the scope of the problems and the hope needed to leverage and learn from one another. People of faith, perhaps of the Gospel of Mark, remember this: hope explained. Amen.
Impossible dream, to fight the unbeatable foe, to bear with unbearable sorrow, to run where the brave dare not go, to right the unrightable wrong, to love pure and chaste from afar, to try when your arms are too weary, to reach the unreachable star. This is my quest, to follow that star, no matter how hopeless, no matter how far, to fight for the right without question or pause, to be willing to march into hell for a heavenly cause. peaceful and calm when I'm laid to my rest. And the world will be better for this, that one man, scorned and covered with scars, still strove with his last ounce of courage to reach the unreachable.